Good afternoon. Welcome to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones. This afternoon's topic, I'm going to talk about a condition or an epidemic called the failure to launch syndrome. Now, failure to launch, it was a name that was established from a movie that was released in 2006, which featured Kathy Bates, Terry Bradshaw, Matthew McConaughey, and Jessica Parker. Now, the story was about a child, an adult child, who didn't want to leave home, and that child was played by Matthew McConaughey. The parents were Terry Bradshaw and, of course, Kathy Bates, and Jessica Parker was also featured as the mom basically had hired her, and she was a very attractive young lady, so her femininity was utilized to actually deceive Matthew McConaughey into thinking he was going to date this individual, but that wasn't the case. The bottom line is Kathy Bates hired Jessica Parker in the movie to try to get him out of the house. Her job was to do different things like go boating, rock climbing. You saw everything that was going on in the movie. But when it comes to failure to launch syndrome, while it is not a true diagnosed category, the popular phrase failure to launch syndrome describes a young adult who seems to be stuck, not moving forward, or maturing in a way that seems appropriate for a young adult his or her own age, as well as expectations, and as well as the expectations of others, and that includes the child's parents. Now, maybe they are trying to move from a structured world to a less structured world, from high school to college, for instance. The situation can promote a tremendous growth or a tremendous regression, especially if the young adult has difficulty with organized and independent living skills. Now, maybe the child could be dealing with a complex challenge or diagnosis such as Asperger's syndrome, bipolar disorder, learning disabilities, ADHD or ADD, or other multitude of issues that contribute to the inability or satisfactorily develop the type of identity needed to persevere and be independent. Perhaps the child never internalized a sense of self-confidence based on their own lived experiences where they had to overcome challenges, faced complex social encounters, dealt with the anxiety of sharing a passion in music or art, or revealed some vulnerability to the world and felt all right about it. Whatever the reason is, the child or the young adult child, I call them young adults because after you pass a certain age, you're no longer a child. And I'm talking about past 21. But you can still be overwhelmed, and this child might need support. Well, but does that explain what failure to launch is? Absolutely not. So, I'm going to describe it to you right now. Basically, the failure to launch syndrome is an unofficial name for a common problem that's seen in millennials or today's young adults. Now, in short, it could be defined as the inability, either from the desire or lack of preparation, to leave home and begin a journey toward a self-sufficient life. For young adults, the premise of taking full responsibility for the future can be daunting and even debilitating, with the rites of passage, like college and a first full-time job, are enabling and encouraging for most young adults. These changes can cause regressive behavior in some. Now, the transition into self-sufficient adulthood isn't easy for everyone, and it appears to be especially difficult for young males. Now, what does it look like? Well, where do you draw the line anyway between a young adult who needs a little bit of extra support during an especially trying time and someone who is simply not motivated or failing to launch? Now, some of the following signs might be red flags for a current or future failure to launch. Of course, here they are. Well, there's the low tolerance for distress, lack of motivation, low levels of persistence, failure to take responsibility when appropriate, They're very narcissistic in nature, low work ethic, high expectations of others without being reciprocating themselves, lack of vision for the future or any long-term goals, lack of skills needed for adulthood like basic cooking and cleaning skills. Now, the root causes of failure to launch syndrome are what everyone wants to know about. Parents are eager to figure out if they did something wrong along the way. That way might have resulted in the failure to launch of the young adults they currently are now hosting at home. In some cases, the parents might be partly responsible for the stagnation. In other cases, they might not be responsible for anything at all. The economy, although it's getting better, it is still undeniably weak, and that's coming from my own perspective. So the unemployment, although it's getting low, it's still relatively high. Job opportunities still are not plentiful, and some young adults find themselves in a good position out of sheer luck or nepotism. But it's not just the job market being tough right now, it goes beyond that. Now, many young adults who currently live at home with their parents went to college and pursued degrees, and that's a good thing. Now, some of these young adults received their degrees, but many of the degrees that today's young adults pursued were encouraged to pursue are not the types of degrees that are creating sought-after candidates in the current economy. Many arts degrees, for instance, need to be backed by a brain for business, especially marketing, if they are to put good use with their degrees or market themselves to be good candidates for employment. Now, other fields that require candidates that have industrial developments in order for them to retain their eligibility. Well, what I mean by that, other fields like engineering, some type of science field or computer science, they're fields that are in demand and they require you to be very good in math. And this is why I tell children, you can go to school and get an English degree, you can get a history degree, you can get a degree in psychology, you can get any of those social science degrees or any degrees such as religious studies. You're going to end up with no job because your field is not in demand and your parents who wanted you to go to college didn't check out the major. They just wanted you to get a degree. But also, when it comes to colleges, colleges don't teach you how to market yourself. That's something you have to learn on your own. You have to take responsibility. Colleges teach you from a theoretical standpoint, but you have to apply the theory in the real world. Now, meanwhile, today's adults have basically grown up with the internet and a consequential yearning for instant gratification, unlike any other generation. The instant gratification provided by modern media might have a negative effect on some young adults, yielding less ambitious drive and persistence for goals that cannot be quickly achieved. There are outside factors that most certainly play a role in the failure to launch epidemic. But here's one thing that you must understand as well. What about parental factors? Because they also play into the increasing number of failure to launch cases. Parents who were overprotective of their children, known as helicopter parents, should expect that their children might have difficulty assessing their own autonomy if they were not taught to do so from a young age, and that generally happens. There are treatment programs and centers that can help reboot young adults for some of these issues, but longer-term therapy may be necessary for some of the deeper issues. Now, let's go into that. This epidemic has been happening for a long time. Now, I see it with most women-headed households, and it doesn't matter what race you are because it's all across lines. Now, or all across racial lines. Now, that being said, it doesn't matter the economic status of the mother. Mothers are very enabling when it comes to their children these days. Why? Because they want to get their children to like them. This is why they give their children an opinion. Also, you have a number of family members living together. Again, mostly women are sharing cars or sharing responsibilities of the house. And I'm talking about adults my age, still living at home. I know a couple in Pittsburgh. They're sharing a car. They limit themselves to dating because they haven't grown up. They haven't developed the skills to maintain a life to be self sufficient. And when you can't do basic things like cooking and cleaning, you're going to suffer in the real world. This is why a number of them are always eating out and they utilize the microwave. They don't know how to shop or balance a checkbook because they weren't taught. And some of these mothers here enable it. Why? Because they don't want their children to grow at all. Why? Because the mothers didn't grow. The mothers would have a dependency personality disorder, which means that you have to have somebody that you can relate to because you can't handle living on your own either. And that's the problem. And when it comes to the mothers, they allow their children to talk back to them. I'm not saying all of them, but there are a number of them that do. And these children, when they get the confidence to do that, they think they can go out there and do that to everybody. And some of what I see in these children across racial lines, no work. They're living free. The mothers don't make them pay rent. Hell, if I'm living for free, why do I want to go out in the real world? The mothers are cooking. They're cleaning for them. Again, they're playing PlayStation. They're on the internet, like Facebook. They're making videos constantly. And I'm not talking about individuals who are making videos for a living. These individuals are constantly on the internet. They're constantly on a cell phone. Their mothers don't make them do anything with regards to responsibility. But what this failure to launch child or young adult is doing is basically living off the fat of the lamb. Why? Because they're not required to pay for food, water. They get to sleep for free. And even you have mothers who are allowing their grown children's children to live in the house with them as well. Now, I can see if the child has a special needs and a divorce, but there's a certain time to where your children need to grow up and be on their own. And it's getting worse. This country is steadily regressing because it used to be children from 18 to 22 when the children are in college. I could see that. But now you got children my age living with their parents. I don't know how many profiles I saw on different dating sites where 50-year-old children are living at home. Now, case in point, some of them might be taking care of their parents, but you have a number of them who actually bought a house with their mom. And it's basically with the moms, not with the dads. It's with the moms. Why? Because moms aren't structured. Children get away with everything with their moms. They don't get away with the same nonsense with their dads because dads are more forceful. And that also shows the lack of disrespect that everybody has for women, period. I've seen children who live at home talk back to their moms and their moms did nothing. Why? It goes back to the same situation. The mom wants to give in to the child so the child and the mom can get along. But some of these moms haven't grown up because the situation should be, I'm the captain of the ship, you're a crew member, you do what I say, and if you don't, I'm booting your ass out. And these moms are afraid to kick their children out. Now, my mom, if I had any type of disrespect, guess what? Said you get out there where it's cold and you fend for yourself. That's what is supposed to happen. But you have kids who don't really care about leaving. And again, you have moms. I knew a young lady by the name of Debbie who lived in Allentown. She said her kids will go when they're ready to go. Well, you're already telling me your kids will never be leaving. And what happens? They're hanging out with their kids like they're hanging out with girlfriends. The kids are talking to their parents or their mom like they would talk to their friends. The kids have too much free range. They're cursing. I've heard a kid call his mom a bitch. So really what's happening, you got two schools of thought when it comes to this failure to launch type of syndrome. Number one, you got a dependency personality disorder with the mother on one side, and then you got the failure to launch syndrome with the children on the other. Well, at the end of the day, they need each other. And also, the mom is basically a helicopter mom. They're too overprotective and they shelter their children. They don't give their children the skills they need. Why? Because the mother didn't have skills. How many mothers do you know don't know how to cook? And then there's another situation. It's where the mother's on welfare. Her children grow. She talks her child into having a baby. They all live in the same house together. There you go, the check comes in. They understand the system. But at the end of the day, they're not helping their children become self-sufficient. They're keeping their children dependent. Why? Because it's easy to sit back and let your children do what they want to do and run amok, and you benefit off of what they're doing, whether it's getting a welfare check or you as a parent can be lazy because you have a number of parents who don't have the skills to be parents. But either way, the epidemic is becoming worse and worse and worse. And here in America, and I discussed this with a young lady, she said, well, families of other cultures do that. That's true. But that's in their country. Yes, some of them bring their cultures here, but for the most part, their children are self-sufficient. And even if you live around your parents once you live or once you leave, guess what? If you're constantly calling your mom, you haven't left the nest yet. And it used to be shameful for a child to go back home and never leave. Now, besides the failure to launch children, you got the boomerang children. Again, they'll leave and come back, and then you got the revolving door children. Why? Because it is the woman who allows it to happen. Again, I'm going to repeat myself because repetition is the mother of all teachings and skills. Mothers are very permissive. Mothers want their children to approve of them. That's ass backwards thinking. All you're doing to your child is teaching them how to get over, and they're going to do it. And if they disrespect you, which they are, they're going to disrespect somebody else out in the real world. Again, people out in the real world aren't going to put up with that nonsense. And these mothers are too enabling. Now, you have some dads out there, don't get me wrong. But again, most of these households are raised by women. And when you have a bunch of women in the house, it becomes very dysfunctional. How many times have you called a woman and you're a guy and you hear nothing but women in the background? It is very nauseating. I mean, they got their daughter living at home. They got their daughter's daughter living at home. They're like a bunch of roaches. And I guarantee if you go into their house, it's not clean because the mothers don't require anything of the children but to have them there so they can see them every day. That's it. Again, they're not required to pay rent, not required to cook, clean. They're required to go as they please. In other words, these children are treated like adults, but they don't have the capacity to be an adult. That's a big problem. This is why it is very important to have male influence. Because under male leadership, that doesn't happen unless you are a simp, raised by your mother, passive aggressive. Because as a male, you got to take over and assert your position. Women just don't have that style. Women are nurturers by nature. We're problem solvers. But when you live in a society under gynocracy, hypergamy, what that does, it alleviates masculinity for the delusional thought of this woman leading her household. They don't lead their households. In fact, the most dysfunction comes from woman-headed households. Why? Again, mothers are very permissive. Mothers want to get their children to like them. In fact, mothers want to be friends with their children. That's why their children talk to them the way the children would talk to their own friends, because the mothers allow it. But in the end, it is the mothers who are basically dependent on their children living there, because the mothers don't have the skills to live on her own either. And she's been with the children ever since their inception, because probably the father left. That's why divorce came, or the father passed. But it is still a parent's job to teach their children how to be self-sufficient. I see many scenarios out here where kids are bringing in boyfriends and girlfriends and having sex in their mother's houses. Kids are smoking dope with their mothers, and the mothers think it's fine. And these mothers are basically mothers by name, but they're not parents, they're kids themselves, because they're trying to be kids. This is why you have the situation where the mothers are trying to compete with their daughters for the same types of men. This is why the mothers, even when they get older, they have their children living with them at home, they hang in the same places, because these mothers aren't grown up. How can you expect the kids to grow up? This is why when a mother has a relationship and it doesn't work out, well, you get the kids who are trying to intervene in the mother's business. Why? Because the mother tells her kids everything. Oh, my man did this, my man did that. And their kids might not even know the facts, but they're going to try to call out that man, curse him out, and be disrespectful to him because they think that kid hurt their mother. It's okay to be protective of your mother, but it used to be an old adage, kids are to be seen, not heard. Not today's kids. Today's kids think they rule the world, even though they don't have any knowledge of how to be an adult themselves. And the bottom line, when it comes to the failure to launch syndrome, it's not just one symptom. It is two symptoms. The failure to launch includes the dependency personality disorder along with the helicopter parenting. Now, if a child is coming up and a mother is putting him, and I'm talking about the children, in different activities, that's not helicopter parenting. No. If a mother is going to PTA meetings, that's not helicopter parenting. Why? Because some of these mothers might not be going for their children, they might be going for themselves, because they're trying to enhance themselves, particularly some of these educated and these soccer moms. They're really about themselves. And again, if you look at the hierarchy, God, man, woman, and child, children aren't responsible for anything. The mother is responsible for children. And this is why mothers and children are close-knit. Why? Because mothers and children have a couple things in common. But the biggest thing is mothers and children are both narcissistic. And they look for autonomy in people. In other words, they don't want the person that they're looking to get something from to have any mind at all. They want to use them as a tool. That's the problem. See, men are used as tools by women. This is why once a man loses his value, well, the woman doesn't want him anymore. Well, it's how the children are. The children imitate what they see their parents doing. And that's why you have the blatant disrespect, the undisciplined, and the dysfunction. Because most of these households are run by women. And if you don't believe me, look for yourself. If you don't like this video, the way I'm presenting the material, you can thumb the video down. It's not going to hurt me, because the truth is always going to prevail. If you don't like what I'm saying, you don't have to watch it. But if you are hurt by what I'm saying, that means I'm telling the truth. Because in the end, The failure to launch syndrome is really caused by overbearing parents. And some of these overbearing parents are narcissistic because these parents, some of them try to live their lives through their children because they didn't have successful lives. And the children, they have this idea that they can do what they want, anytime they want, without being reprimanded. This is why you have the, if you hit me, I'm going to call 911. And with the failure to launch syndrome, what has happened, society now has regressed. These kids living at home will never be good fathers or mothers, and they're never going to grow up. Again, if you don't believe me, you look at individuals in their 50s. You have some of these older men and women trying to compete with their children for the same types of people. They're trying to be young again. They never want to grow up. And that's from failure to launch. And it's perfectly okay in this society not to grow up, not to be responsible. And it's going to get worse. And if you're out here dating, you need to look for these signs. If a woman or a man has, my family's the most important thing to me, don't date that person. That's in one of my 52 rules of dating. If they have grown children living at home, don't date them. I don't care how good they look. You want somebody who is responsible, and if their kids are disrespectful, you'll find that out as well. Don't date that person. You'll be miserable. Because at the end of the day, when you're out here dating, men and women, you got to be realistic but selfish about who you're going to date. Because anybody who comes into your life with baggage is going to affect you. So what I'm trying to say overall, the failure to launch is caused by some of these helicopter parents and a lack of motivation from these children. But it is the parent that I have to pin everything on, because the parent is the one with the skills and the motivation and the knowledge and, of course, the experience to teach their children how to be model citizens. And it's my commentary for this edition of the 401 Talk Zone radio show for this afternoon, Friday, August 25th, 2017. You can tune into the 401 Talk Zone radio show every Saturday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio. Guest call-in number is 215-383-5785. If you like my videos, please share and subscribe to the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube, so I can continue to give you quality information for educational purposes from a professional and mature perspective. Now, on this channel, I don't engage in debates, controversy, or emotional issues, nor do I participate in drama and or unnecessary bickering. Why? Because it is counterproductive. What I do on my channel is teach. I give you the information that is very positive but realistic, because if you don't have the tools to survive in the real world, you're going to end up in a situation just as I presented today. You're going to end up being a failure to launch, or you're going to have a dependency personality disorder. So the best thing to do is get informed, understand what's going on around you, because it will help you succeed. Because if you have knowledge, you have power. And if you have a business, a topic, or a new YouTube channel that you would like for me to discuss on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, please email me at lej6521@gmail.com. And if you have a comment, please leave your comment in the comment section under the video. But make sure that your comments are pithy, no bloviating, pettifogging, or filibustering if you wish to opine. Now that's it for this video. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Remember, please be gentle and respectful to each other, and have a wonderful and blessed afternoon.